Okay, so my name is Ella Morrison. I'm in Danielle and Chris's Thursday 8 a.m. tutorial. The school that I completed my professional experience at was an all-girls Catholic school in Toowoomba. It ranged from year 7 to year 12, and there was approximately 500 students that attended this school. So I was involved in teaching obviously multiple different year levels, but for this discussion, I'm going to be focusing on the assessment for learning strategies that I implemented in my Year 8 English class. So this was a mixed ability class of 25 students, and they all had access to MacBooks. So my key learning intention was influenced by two content descriptors. These were explore the ways that ideas and viewpoints in literary texts drawn from different historical, social, and cultural concepts may reflect or challenge the values of individuals and groups, and to create literary texts that draw upon text structures and language features of other texts for particular purposes and effects. So ultimately, I used these to create the learning intention that students needed to create a short story that explores what happens to one of the characters in a gap in the novel, British Terabithia, that showcases the character's attitudes, values, beliefs, and personality. So because students had already read the book and done about 2 lessons on it, I decided to implement some diagnostic assessment to gauge an idea of what their understandings of the characters were. So I gave them these two of these graphic organizers, and I gave them 10 minutes to write down everything that they knew about, to describe everything about the characters Jess and Leslie, so the 2 main characters in the novel. I then asked these students to email me their completed graphic organizers, so you can see student 13's sample. And after the lesson, I reviewed all students' responses, and I wanted to do this to identify the students' needs in regard to what in their understanding needed to develop. And I wanted to be able to accurately plan and implement learning experiences that would help fulfill these needs. So in this diagnostic assessment, I was specifically looking for evidence that students could accurately describe characters' core beliefs, values, attitudes, and personality, that they could correctly interpret the author's portrayal of Jess and Leslie. That was really important to fulfilling the content descriptor number 2, and provide enough examples to fill those boxes. I also kept an eye out for any misconceptions that I could see. So up on the screen now, I used Excel spreadsheet to track the progression of my students because I wanted to see how they progressed over the term. And as you can see, most students were able to put in enough detail to get proficient, strong mastery. And also a lot were quite good at describing the personalities of the characters. Where we did see a lot of students not quite reaching the mark was with accurately portraying the characters as the author intended them to be seen. Yeah. So feed up was something that was really important for me to implement. I consistently wanted to provide this to students to give them an indication of where the lesson was going and where the learning was going. I did this by writing on the board at the start of every lesson what the learning goal was and what the success criteria was. And I've just got an example of something that I would write on the board every day, just down the bottom there. Okay, so the first formative assessment strategy that I decided to use was questioning and discussions. So I wanted to be able to use this consistently throughout to gain more of an understanding of how students' learning was progressing, and also to quite easily negotiate any misconceptions that students had. So I posed a lot of questions that were designed to stimulate deep thought and conversations, and I thought this would help them really get a greater understanding of the novel's themes and of the characters within the novel. And none of these questions had simple answers, no yes or no questions. They required students to engage in higher order thinking skills and knowledge utilization. So I just have a few responses. The students responded to the questions and discussions in multiple ways, so I've just got a few of those up on the screen. So we've got individual written response, which I've just got an example of student 13's there. So these are the 2 questions down here, and then those were her responses. We did a lot of think, pair, shares, small group discussions, spectrum and barometer activities were quite interesting to get students to pick yes or no to a question and then have to justify their answer. That was also really good for me to get an understanding of where their thinking was at. And we also did a lot of whole class discussions. So on this questions and discussion, feedback was mainly provided in a really informal way, either by myself or from peer feedback. And the feedback, it was always given verbally and was directed at the task, not necessarily the student. So often I would make general comments when I was checking the homework, like, I really enjoyed the way that you portrayed this character. Perhaps next time you could try and explaining why this character feels that way. Or this often happened through class discussions. So students would share their response to a question and then other students would agree and elaborate, or they would disagree and have to explain why. Additionally, when we were giving this feedback, it was really important to try and make it more about the feed forward. So not about what maybe wasn't done so well, but what we can do to improve our learning. That was the main idea that I tried to share with my students. Additionally, when collecting formative assessment for some tasks, I mainly just tried to focus on collecting data surrounding student engagement, because it was quite hard, as it was quite a large concept to put into a spreadsheet almost. So yes, you can just see I've got ticks and crosses if they did the work, if they didn't do the work, and then some notes if I needed to come back and check the student's understanding further. This one I really liked. So I implemented an action strategy, and I wanted the students to really empathize with the main characters of the book. So I gave students the task to create a duologue, so with a partner, and I wanted them to explore what might have happened in the story if Jess had admitted he was afraid to Leslie. So we just got that going on there. And so what I was looking for, a truthful depiction of characters, demonstrating an understanding of these characters and their personalities, and also it had to fit within the text. So giving feedback on this was a task which mainly relied on peer feedback. I didn't really give too much input on this. The students had a really good handle on it, so I was happy to let them take the reins. The students nominated themselves to perform the duologue for class, and everyone wanted to do it, so that was really, well, not everyone, almost everyone. And the students gave really respectful feedback. So I've just, as you can see, I've just written, this is just one page of the feedback notes that I wrote down. So I asked students first to explain what they really liked about the performance they just saw in terms of the story. And then I asked them to let the pair know something that they feel that they could do better next time. So we've just got some examples on the side. That one second down from the bottom, that is student 13s. Okay, so my final formative assessment. This final formative assessment was designed to really relate back to their learning goal. So students were asked to write 100 to 200 word short stories, and I assigned them a character and a setting from the novel to do this. As this is just a less complex version of what they will have to do for their summative assessment, essentially. So I thought that was really important to let them practice these skills and get some feedback. Okay, so yeah, this task was a really good opportunity for me to be able to give them some really in-depth and individual feedback about how they can improve their practice. So giving them that feed forward too, not just what they didn't do well, what they can do to get even better. I used LOR and Corno's feedback technique that we studied in EUB343. And the technique is that you just give a general comment and suggest room for improvement. And you also ensure that there's some positive remarks in there. So rather than just highlighting the negatives, you're giving them that whole paragraph. As you can see, I've written, that's the blue is what I've written. And yeah, so they have to use that to then further improve their practice. And this is just an example here of how student 13, that was student 13's work, that was her first paragraph that she wrote, and then how she used my feedback to edit and finalize her paragraph. So that's just an example there. I'll let you have a look at that in your own time. So finally, evidence of impact. So obviously that's the diagnostic assessment that we looked at first up. But then when I did final formative assessment, I didn't want it to be all about what I thought and it all be about my judgment of the students. I wanted them to judge their own abilities and how they felt they were tracking. As you can see, so much improvement in regards to the way students are depicting the characters. So accurately depicting them the way that the author intended them to be shown. That was really important. And yeah, so correctly interpreting that author's portrayal, and also accurately portraying values, beliefs, attitudes. Personality was rated quite high, but that's all up, which was really good to see. And then finally here, you've just got, this is just, we've looked at this all before, but it's just sort of to give you an idea of how the student progressed. This is all student 13's work, how she progressed throughout the 4 weeks that I was with her. So starting off with this really basic description of a character, and these aren't about the same character, but it's the same ideas. We're looking at all the characters' values, attitudes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so just how that progressed throughout the term. And I feel like this would be a really good tool to show students as well, because when you tell them about the assessment task at, the beginning or middle of the term, it just seems so overwhelming to them. But then when you show them how little by little you build these skills and you build up these understandings, and by the end, it's like she has done so well with that final paragraph. I'm really happy. I wish I could have seen her final summative assessment. That would have been really cool. So for my future PECs, I'd like to use that mastery spreadsheet at the start of the term, have students rate themselves at the start of the term and then at various checkpoints throughout the term, rather than, I really liked it at using it, and I didn't realize how much I would like it. So I'd like to go back to that and use it again, but use it throughout so that students can see how they thought they were doing at the start and then compare that to how they're doing now and see that improvement. I also really want to learn more about data collection and how I can use it to improve my planning, and how I can make learning better for all students by using this data. I think that's something that I need to look further into myself. I also really love using peer feedback, which is something I discovered on PECs. So I'd like to look into that more and use that a bit more next semester. And more feed up and a different way to implement it. So I found that sort of by week 4, just writing the learning intentions on the board, it was sort of not engaging students as much as it was initially. So I think I need to find a way or ways to really make that engaging and exciting and informational for students. And also to be able to stay longer, but the prerogative of a prac student to only be there for a few weeks. Just to see the whole arc of the learning experience would be really rewarding. Just starting from that point of not much knowledge on the subject at all to being able to write a 600 to 800 word short story, just seeing that arc would be really rewarding. And I think that's something as well that comes with tracking progress rather than just looking at individual pieces. You get to see that arc and get that reward. That's my reference list. Thanks.